So, if you've ever typed how to budget into a search bar, I guarantee you've stumbled across the 50-30-20 rule. It is without a doubt the single most repeated piece of financial advice on the internet. But we need to talk about something that nobody really seems to want to answer honestly. In 2026, with rent, groceries, and insurance costing what they do right now, does this math actually still work? Or is this famously simple rule just quietly setting us up to feel like we're failing, when really the rule itself just doesn't fit the real world anymore?
Welcome to The Explainer. Here's our roadmap for today. First, we'll look at what the rule actually says. Second, why the math is breaking down for so many of us. Third, we'll ask if it's completely useless or just incomplete. And finally, we'll build a realistic 2026 budget.
Okay, jumping into Section 1, what the rule says. The classic three-bucket framework.
You really have to admire the pristine simplicity of this framework. It was originally popularized by Senator Elizabeth Warren and her daughter Amelia Warren Tayaji, and the idea is just so straightforward. You take your after-tax income, that's your actual take-home pay, right? And you split it three ways: 50% to needs, 30% to wants, and 20% to savings. It's this textbook split that went absolutely viral on apps like TikTok, basically because it's so easy to remember. You don't need some massive complicated spreadsheet to track three numbers.
Let's just quickly define what goes into these buckets. Your needs are the non-negotiables, the things you genuinely cannot skip. We're talking housing, utilities, groceries, insurance, and minimum debt payments. Now your wants, on the other hand, are the things that make life, well, fun. Dining out, streaming subscriptions, travel, maybe upgrading your phone. It's a very neat, tidy way to categorize your life.
Which brings us to Section 2, why the math breaks down, the 2026 economic reality.
Look, we are facing a pretty harsh economic reality in 2026. 34%. That is the current national average of income spent on housing alone. And remember, that's just the average. If you're renting in a major city right now, your housing costs could easily be gobbling up 35 to 50% of your take-home pay right off the bat. Literally day one of the month.
So you can see how fast this builds up. The old assumption was that all your needs were capped at 50%, but the 2026 reality? It shows needs pushing way up into the 60 to 65% range. When you take that massive housing cost we just talked about, and then you stack groceries, utilities, insurance, and transportation on top of it, you blow right past that textbook 50% limit before you've spent a single dollar on anything fun. And hey, this is important. This is not a story about people wildly overspending on lattes. This is just a structural math problem.
And, beyond the basic cost of living, there's another huge hurdle here. It's a really common but much subtler mistake people make. They use their gross income, meaning their salary before taxes, to calculate these percentages, instead of their after-tax take-home pay. If you do that, you're artificially inflating your buckets. It makes it look like you have way more room in your budget than you actually do in reality, which of course just leads to massive stress when the math doesn't add up at the end of the month.
So what is the result of all this financial pressure? Well, the current national personal savings rate is sitting in the low single digits. Low single digits. That is absolutely nowhere near the rule's super optimistic 20% target.
The absolutely crucial point here is this. If you've been missing these targets, it does not mean you are bad with money. It really doesn't. The rule's framework and the modern cost of living have simply drifted apart. The whole cost structure that this rule is originally built on has just changed dramatically over the years.
Which leads us to kind of pause and ask a pretty pivotal question. So is the 50-30-20 rule actually useless now? Should we literally just throw the whole thing out?
Let's explore that in Section 3. Useless or just incomplete? Evaluating what is left of the rule.
Okay, here's the honest truth. If you treat this rule as a strict law, it completely fails. If you try to use it as this exact pass or fail test that was calibrated for a totally different decade, you're just going to end up frustrated. But, and this is a big but, if you treat it as a flexible framework, it actually still works beautifully. It functions as a really great on-ramp and a shared, easy-to-remember mental model. That's especially true for couples or beginners who just want a straightforward way to categorize their money, without having to track every single receipt. Moving on to Section 4, a realistic 2026 budget, how to adjust the framework.
All right, here are the 4 actionable steps we're going to cover to modernize this whole framework. Step 1, calculate your actuals. Step 2, treat it as a target. Step 3, protect your savings. And Step 4, adjust gradually. Let's break these down.
Step 1 is absolutely vital. You need to calculate your actual current split using last month's real bank statements. You have got to stop the guesswork here. Don't base your budget on what you hope you spent. Base it on the cold, hard data right from your bank account to see exactly what percentage went to your needs, your wants, and your savings last month. Once you have your real numbers in front of you, step 2 is to treat your split as a flexible target. If your real, sustainable math looks more like a 60% needs, 20% wants, and 20% savings split, or hey, even 65-15-20, that is a completely valid, functional budget today. A budget you can actually sustain is worth infinitely more than some textbook budget that collapses 2 weeks into the month just because your rent was too high. Step 3 brings us to a piece of expert consensus that you really need to internalize. The 20% savings floor is the most important number in the whole framework. If the math is tight for you and you need to cut spending, the general consensus is that you absolutely must cut from your wants bucket first. You have to fiercely protect that savings bucket above almost everything else.
And finally, step 4. Work your needs percentage back down gradually as your income grows or your fixed costs reduce. Listen, the direction you're moving in matters way more than hitting an exact textbook number right away. Give yourself some grace here and just adjust slowly over time.
Now, right before we wrap up, I want to make a really quick note about zero-based budgeting. If you eventually find that you want a bit more precision than 3 broad buckets can give you, well, this is your next step. It's a method where every single dollar gets assigned a specific job. But let me be perfectly clear. This is a level 2 method. It is absolutely not where beginners need to start. So please, don't let it overwhelm you if you're just starting to organize your finances.
So, what's the bottom line? The 50-30-20 rule isn't fundamentally broken. The economic assumptions it was built on just changed. Run your own real numbers, protect your savings, and adjust the framework so it fits your actual life. I want to leave you with this one question to think about. What is your actual needs, wants, savings split in 2026? I am genuinely so curious to see how far off the textbook everyone actually is today. Drop your real-world numbers in the comments below, keep learning, and I'll see you in the next explainer.